Okay, so let me just put the webcam on for you as well. Hopefully you'll be able to see me in a moment and get the slides up. Cool. So hi everyone. I'm Elliot Bledsoe. I'm currently the digital producer at Regional Arts Australia. I've been working in kind of digital technologies for 10 years. And in particular, for a number of years, I worked for the Creative Commons office here in Australia, based out of Brisbane, which is where I currently am. And I was the Creative Industries Officer with Creative Commons Australia for 8 years. And in particular, my job was to encourage and support the uptake of the Creative Commons licenses in the arts and cultural sector, and to support potential license users in how they might utilize the licenses or how the licensing practices might fit within the rights management processes that they were currently using. So I have extensive background in the utilization of Creative Commons as a tool for facilitating internal rights management and for facilitating different kinds of relationships with different kinds of stakeholders. So, everything from being able to share your content with other people to collaboration frameworks and all kinds of different things. So I've been invited along today to tell you a little bit about the Creative Commons project, and in particular about why I see it as being really important for the not-for-profit sector. So before I begin, a couple of things. There's an interesting lag between when I change a slide and when you see it. So I've got two screens here, one which is what you're seeing and one which is what I'm seeing. So I'm going to try to accommodate for the lag difference. So you might have to bear with me. We don't quite have a national broadband network yet, so the ability to do this in real time is still somewhat limited. So please bear with me, but hopefully I'll try to accommodate the difference so that what I'm saying to you is coinciding with what you're seeing. Okay. But first, before I start, I'd like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the traditional elders of the land on which I meet on today, and which you're the traditional people from the lands on which you're currently viewing this webinar. Here in Brisbane, I would like to acknowledge the Yuggera, the Yuggera, Jagera, and Turrbal peoples. I think it's important, particularly as somebody who works in digital technology, to acknowledge the role and importance of Indigenous customary knowledge and culture. And I think particularly it's important to realise that this isn't significantly different to networked communication technologies. Indigenous peoples the world round have been sharing knowledge through networks for hundreds of thousands of years. The rest of us are kind of catching up with that through the technologies that we're currently using. Okay, so starting off, just waiting for that slide to come across. Okay, so the important thing, and the whole reason why Creative Commons exists or was founded was because of some of the unintended consequences of copyright. Copyright started as an idea or a method around the incentivization of creative content, and what people were to try to facilitate and encourage people to continue to create content for the public good. And so it was really designed as a system to ensure that a set of exclusive rights and controls over content were vested in the creators of content in order to continue to encourage them to create. The interesting thing about that, though, is, of course, as time has progressed, as the kinds of interests that are vested in copyright and that control large intellectual property portfolios have changed, the kind of outcome or the result of copyright has changed. Instead of being strictly about incentivizing the creation of work for public dissemination, copyright has essentially become a barrier to access to content, to the kind of flow and movement of content through the online environment in particular. But this is certainly not a new problem. There's been lots of conversations and criticisms of intellectual property in that regard, and particularly that increasingly large portfolios of intellectual property are controlled by individual, large corporations. That the kind of age of small copyright owners, individual creators managing their intellectual property has changed quite significantly. So kind of with this framework or with this paradox, this problem in mind, Creative Commons came around because, as a kind of response to it, because this very protective, very regulated model of copyright protects basically everything. It protects literary works, it protects dramatic works, so works on stage, musical works as well. It's very interesting trying to accommodate for the lag. So musical works and artistic works, these are grouped together under the Copyright Act as the works categories, but it also applies to the interestingly named subject matter other than works, which is not particularly descriptive, but includes a number of other areas of content that is protected by copyright. Those include cinematic film, also includes sound recordings, as well as television and radio broadcasts, and published editions. So a published edition is the the layout, the look and feel of a book rather than the actual literary work itself. So, for example, a book is both a literary work and a published edition and can have two separate copyright owners. But because copyright is automatic, all of these types of works are protected from the moment they are created, whether the owner of the work has explicitly said that that's the case or not. So the reality is, if you create something, it is automatically protected by copyright. The default within copyright is that it is all rights reserved, which basically means no one can touch it. And if you want to change that, you actually need to assign a license or some other legal mechanism in order to change that automatic default. But without a change to that default, the kind of standard position is that any type of work in those categories is protected and is protected to the exclusion of all others. And importantly, that protection lasts for a really long time. It lasts for the life of the creator. In the instance of the works categories, so the literary, musical, artistic, and dramatic works, it lasts for the life of the creator plus 70 years. So your copyright continues to linger on after you're dead. In the instance of the subject matter other than works categories, it is for 70 years from the end of the calendar year in which the content was first published. So basically, you're talking about either 70 years or 70 years plus the average lifespan. So you're talking about a really long time that this automatic, no one can touch it default exists and applies to content, regardless of the intention of the owner of the work. The Copyright Act by default says you can't touch anything unless you have explicit permission from the creator of the work for an exceptionally long period of time. You're basically talking either one lifetime, 70 years is roughly the average lifetime for most Western nations, or even worse, in the kind of works categories, you're talking about essentially two lifetimes. One, the creator's entire lifespan, and then 70 years. So you're talking about a very long time that content can't be reutilized unless there is an explicit mechanism through which that content is made available for reuse. So it's against this kind of lens, this situation that copyright had created, that Creative Commons emerged, because the theory was that for some creators, there are legitimate reasons and means and business models for wanting to share content. but not as a free-for-all, not to just give up everything altogether. So there needed to be something that kind of sat in between the kind of public domain, no rights reserved, everything is available to be used in whatever way you like, and the kind of very restrictive copyright model of all rights reserved. So Creative Commons was formed running with the motto some rights reserved, which was the idea that you could grant a kind of permission in advance for certain types of uses while restricting any other use. And it was really designed to facilitate sharing. So the utilization of copyright as a legal mechanism through a set of licenses which are granted to the public to facilitate sharing. As I said, really focused on the idea of a permission in advance. So where copyright says you have to come to me and ask for permission every time you want to do something, Creative Commons was about saying there are certain things that I'm just going to give you a permission in advance. So you don't have to come to me and ask. As long as you comply with the license, then you are able to use it because I've already given you permission. So very quickly, because we don't have a whole lot of time, running through the kind of fundamentals of how Creative Commons works, there are kind of 4 components to how Creative Commons licenses work. And those components relate to the type of use that a user might make with the content. So the very first one is attribution. This is a requirement in all Creative Commons licenses. And basically what it says is you have to acknowledge me as the creator of the work. So any Creative Commons licensed product that you reuse, you have to acknowledge the creator of the work. That includes not just the name or the pseudonym of the creator, but also a link to where the work comes from. Second component is whether or not people can make money out of the reuse of your work. So this is the non-commercial aspect. So basically how it works is if you say you can't make money out of it, you're applying a non-commercial requirement. If you're okay with people making money out of it, you don't apply the non-commercial component. Then the kind of third component is around whether or not people can make changes to the work. So I'm waiting for that slide to come across. There we go. So whether or not people can make changes to the original work or not. So this is referred to as no derivatives. What it means is that if you've applied no derivatives, it means that nobody can make changes to the work. There's no kind of remixing or reappropriation or cutting up of the original work. You have to use it in the way that it's currently made available. And the final component is the share alike component. Now, this is a remix ready component. So what it says is you are able to reuse my stuff. You can, change the format. You could translate it into another language. You could cut bits of it up and make a new collage. You could take my audio sample and run it in a film, whatever. You can reuse my content in any way that you like, as long as you share what you create on the same terms as what I've given it to you. So obviously, no derivatives and share alike are not compatible at all. So these 4 components can be combined in a number of different ways to create one of the 6 Creative Commons licenses in the suite. So starting from the top and running down, you can see the attribution only license, which is at the very top, is the most permissive license, ranging down to the most restrictive license at the bottom, which is the attribution non-commercial, no derivatives. You can't change the work in any way. You can't make money out of it. And as long as you acknowledge the creator, you can share it. So it's essentially a distribution license. So just quickly, I'm going to jump in because I'm conscious of time to how you get a Creative Commons license. So if you go to creativecommons.org, which is the International Creative Commons webpage, and you navigate down to, sorry, I'm just waiting for that to come up. So if you navigate to the Choose License button, which you'll see underneath the license heading, and click on that, that will take you to what's referred to as the Creative Commons License Generator. Now, what this does is allows you to, through the process of answering some questions, determine which type of license you want to apply. So you can see one of the questions is, will you allow adaptations of your work to be shared? Yes or no, or yes, as long as people share it alike. So share it as well. So if you said, no, I don't want people to share it, you can see that the license generator automatically updates to include the no derivatives requirement. Similarly, if you say yes, but people have to share on the same terms, then it automatically updates to include the share alike requirement. And similarly, the second question is about whether or not people can make money out of the reuse. Depending on which way you answer that question will ultimately determine the type of license that you want. It's really as simple as that. Once you've done that process, if you want to, you can add additional information about the work in this column here on the left-hand side. And then you can see that there's computer code here. If you know how to kind of utilize that computer code in HTML, you can embed that into your website. If not, you can see the kind of license notification here tells you what you can put on it. There's a little graphic badge that indicates the type of license. That's not actually required. That's just to help make it easier for people. Basically, as long as you include this information and a link to the license. So if you're writing this in text on something, for example, it's very advisable to list that copy and then to provide a link to the license page. Sorry. So as you can see, when you click through, it gives you what's called a Creative Commons deed. This is essentially a one-page summary of the license and what it allows. So you can see the top indicates the freedoms, what people are able to do with your content under this license, and on what terms they have to abide by. So really, it's as simple as that. And as long as you provide that copy that was listed on the previous page and this URL, people will be able to find the license and will know what they can and can't do. So moving on quickly, also, if you're looking for images and things that you want to use under a Creative Commons license, you can, one location that you can find a lot of Creative Commons content, particularly photos and some video content, is on the Flickr photo sharing website. Now, I'm not 100% sure how you actually get to this page from the homepage. They've kind of redesigned the homepage recently, but you can go to it by using the URL flickr.com/Creative Commons, and Flickr is spelled Flickr. It's very internet, mid-2000s internet. No vowel before the R, but anyway, if you go to flickr.com/Creative Commons, you can see here you've got each one of those icons that I mentioned earlier, indicating the type of license that the photos are published under. And you can see recent images that are published under that particular license. So depending on what you want to do, you can choose one of these content pools in order to determine or to find content that you're looking for. So as nonprofits, in most situations, you're probably not going to be using it for a commercial purpose. So you can rely on licenses that include the non-commercial requirement. However, as a general rule, I kind of say to people, if you rely on attribution only, that is the most flexible and broad license, anything that you do will be fine as long as you acknowledge the creator. If you looked on the slide set that I was using earlier, you'll see that I was using all Creative Commons licensed Flickr images and running an attribution at the bottom. I'll pull you up an example of that. So if you have a look here, you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner, I've got an attribution for this particular image. So you can see I said photo. I've got the username, which is the preferred name that the user that I've taken this image from has added. And you can see I've got a URL here. Flickr has an automatic URL shortener. So if you put flic.kr, that is pretty much the same as putting flickr.com. It's just a little bit shorter. You can also take out other parts of the URL to make a much shorter URL. So basically, as long as you have the username and the ID number of the photograph in the URL, people will be able to get to it. And then as you can see, I've also got a line that says what type of license it's available under. That's really important because it helps other users identify what they can and can't do with the image really quickly. So what I'll do though is I'll demonstrate that image. So I'll pick up the URL from here and show you what happens when another user uses that URL. Whoop. Whoa, what happened there? That's not what I wanted to do. Okay, let's just try this again. Oh, okay. So I've just picked that up and I have pasted it in. So you can see that Flickr will automatically redirect me to the right location. So you can see it changed it from flickr.kr to flickr.com/photos. And you can see this is the image that I've used in the slideshow. It makes it very clear here that the image is licensed on these terms. If another user clicks through on that, that will show them the title deed for this for the license applied to this image. So that helps them identify what they can and can't do. Similarly, if you were going to reuse this image yourself, generally speaking, pick up this heading here, which is the username, as the attribution name, and pick up either the entire URL for where the image is sitting, or as I said, you can also shorten it as well. So if you can take all of that out of the URL and literally just put a dot between the C and the KR. And that's basically the same thing. If you put that same URL in, that will take you to the location, as I said. Oh, that's interesting. Sorry, make sure you still got the slash. So you can see that's an automatic redirection. Oops, that's not good. Sorry. I'm not used to using a Mac anymore. Okay, that's interesting. This network seems to think that might be a phishing site. Anyway, as I said though, that shortened URL will redirect people to the same location. So if, for example, you decided that you were willing to use an image under a non-commercial license, you then have to comply with any other requirements. So no derivatives means you can't change it, which is probably not going to be useful for you. Because if you want to include it in a document or whatever, you might need to crop it or resize it or maybe slightly change the colors. So generally speaking, probably good to go with a license that allows reuse. So for example, you might want to use attribution non-commercial. Once you've clicked into one of these content pools, then you can search, for photos under that license using a keyword. So you might be looking for a photo of a cat because we all know the internet runs on cats. Let's hope nothing too problematic comes up. Good, nothing but photos of cats. That's good. Sometimes you have to be a little bit careful with live demonstrations. So you can see each one of these images is under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial License. So let's decide one of these cat photos. This one looks good. So if you click through to that image, again, as I said, you can pick up the username here and you can grab the URL from up here. Right. So it's really as simple as that. Flickr.com/Creative Commons is where you'll find Creative Commons licensed images and videos. Yep. Yep. And as I said, you can literally just move into those different content pools and find stuff under the licenses that you want. Now, I might open up for questions if people have any. So just give me a second to unmute Harry. So hopefully Harry's been collating your images So your questions? Harry, have we had any questions?
The first one is from Eunice. When you're talking about the choosing the license type with the Creative Commons, her question is, so the license is prepared by the creator of the work, not the potential user of the work?
Yes, that is correct. Because a copyright license has to be issued by the creator. So under the Copyright Act, copyright always vests in the creator of the work first. And if that changes ownership, or if you allow other people to do things with it, it's always a license derived from the creator of the work. So the person who has, put that image on Flickr determines whether or not they want to apply a Creative Commons license. If they haven't applied a Creative Commons license or some other type of license, then it's under all rights reserved copyright and is protected. So yes, the Creative Commons licenses are always issued by the creator of the work, hopefully. Any other questions?
Okay, we've got another question now from Anne. Yes, Anne asks, oops.
Yep.
You have interpreted commercial to mean profit, competitive business too, i.e. commercial.
Okay. Well, the definition of what is commercial and what is non-commercial is tricky, especially when you're talking about things like copyright licensing. Part of the problem stems from the fact that copyright has so the Copyright Act and the courts have never actually explicitly made a distinction between commercial and non-commercial use. Basically, if you infringe copyright and you're not making money, it doesn't matter. It's still an infringement of copyright, regardless. Whether or not you made money becomes a contributing factor as to how much damages the infringed party might be able to attract. But copyright as an idea doesn't care whether your use is commercial or not. Creative Commons realized that for a lot of creators, they do see a distinction between whether or not somebody's making money or not. And so they introduced a non-commercial element to the licensing scheme. Basically, the issue is around whether or not you're raising money for personal gain, essentially. And so given that most nonprofit organizations have a charter or a constitution that restricts the transfer of monies that they raise to stakeholders, to shareholders in particular, means that they would fit within the definition of non-commercial for the purposes of the Creative Commons licenses. However, as I said, as a general rule, if you are a little bit cautious or risk adverse, my advice is to always rely on the attribution only license, because then it doesn't matter. An attribution license, as long as you acknowledge the creator, you can use it commercially and you can remix it. I hope that's answered your question, Anne. So any other questions?
There's about 4 more, so let me know how you're going for time, and I'll shoot through a few more for you.
We can definitely do a couple more.
Okay, we've got one here from Cherie, who asks, if the image is for a fundraiser, is that classed as commercial?
Again, it's a tricky one. It depends on the nature of the organization that's using it and the intended purpose of the fundraising, of the funds raised. Whether or not it would definitely fall within definition of commercial or non-commercial is hard to know. And of course, also the person who put the image out, what their idea of commercial and non-commercial gets tricky. In a situation like that, where it is a little bit of a gray area, my advice would be always rely on the attribution license, because, as I said, then it doesn't matter whether your use is commercial or non-commercial. It doesn't matter whether or not you're remixing the work. So, there's definitely been a lot of questions around the kind of situation or the position for nonprofits and whether or not their actions are commercial or non-commercial. So in situations where you feel uncertain about it, always rely on the attribution license, and then it won't matter. Another question? We might do one more and then hand over.
Yes, there are two here which are kind of related, so I might just give you both.
Sure.
The first one says, what if you're looking at creating content such as PowerPoint and hard copy? This seems to be all web-based.
Yep.
So that's the first question. And then there's another one that says images published on Facebook. Are they all rights reserved unless otherwise stated?
Okay, so in relation to the question about PowerPoints and then distributing hard copies, Creative Commons applies regardless of whether the product is digital or not digital, and regardless of whether the use is digital or not digital. So the Creative Commons license, as long as you've attributed and you've complied with any other requirements of the license, it doesn't matter whether that PowerPoint is digital or whether you're also creating handouts. The license allows you to do those uses as long as you comply with the license requirements. So that's not an issue. Creative Commons applies equally online as it does offline. As far as the question around Facebook, content on Facebook, as a general rule, all content on Facebook is protected by copyright. Facebook doesn't allow a native mechanism for applying a different type of copyright license to content that you're publishing on Facebook. So by default, that content is all rights reserved, and therefore, without the permission of the creator, it's probably an infringement of copyright to reuse that content. Unless somewhere in the comment or the caption for the image, the user has explicitly said this photograph is available for reuse under a Creative Commons whatever license, assume that all content on Facebook is protected by copyright, and therefore either seek a direct license from the owner of the image or caution away from using it. All right, so definitely able to answer more questions at the end as well if people want to, but I will hand over now. Sorry, just changing presenters. So I will hand over to Janita Lyons, who will look at some more specific kind of practical stuff around how people are interacting and utilizing Creative Commons, particularly within the education sector. Sorry, I'm just making sure I've done that correctly. Excellent. I'm going to mute my mic now. So welcome, Janita.
Hopefully now you can all see my screen and hear me. I'm just going to put my video on just to see that you can see, and I'll say hello to you. There you go. How do you do, everybody? I'll just say hello for a quick second, and then I'm going to actually turn this video off because I live in a town where the bandwidth isn't that strong. So I'll say welcome, everyone. My name's Janita Lyon, and I'm the Broadband for Seniors Victorian Networker, and I'm also have been the mentor for the Gippsland region, working with small neighbourhood houses and locals. And my role here is just to tell you a little bit about what we've been up to and what in the education system with a lot of our organisations. So I'm just going to turn this the video off so I don't mess up my bandwidth, and I'll keep going with that. So I'm hoping that you can all hear me. We talk a lot about why have we all changed with what we're doing? And that is because educators and small training organisations throughout Australia are slowly changing their mindsets because they use this technology in their classrooms, in their organisations. So the use of Creative Commons is actually teaching us how to use the technology. See, we also now have techability even in remote areas. We are no longer isolated, and that's one of the good things that technology has brought to us. And also we're now starting to collaborate quite a bit. where did it all start? It all started actually with the emergence of Web 2.0. All of a sudden it added a push and pull effect with a two-way interaction. And what I mean by that is we were at one time in front of the classroom just pushing out information to our students. And with the emergence of the Web 2.0, it brought in a social aspect to being online. So then it was our students were able to push information back to us. So it turned out to be a really good thing for education. And what it also started was it introduced to us things like digital forums, microblogging, social media blogs. Sorry, I just got a phone call. It just sort of threw me off site a bit. And so it started with the emergence of this social media, microblogging, wikis and learning management systems, which we often use, which now makes us better informed. It gives us better resources. It has improved our communication and opportunity, and it's more efficient. It also keeps us up to date. Now, that's really important for an when we live in small towns, and I live in a small town, and one of the organisations I worked with, we didn't have a lot of resources. We had to create our own. So by being able to use the Creative Commons, we were able to find information that we need and to create content that was going to work for us. So one of the beautiful things with this back and forward push and pull situation, it's allowed us to start building our personal learning networks and communities of practice. And we share our work now under Creative Commons license. So instead of the teachers being in front of the class with the door closed, that's how I see it. We now have opened that door to the world. So our students, our learners can now learn things that are happening in other countries. They're not just sitting there with these workbooks that were really starting to give them, bore a lot of them, especially our special needs students. And you'll notice that a lot of the smaller educational organisation, not for profit, we have a lot of special needs students that come along. So becoming a connected professional has given many organisations and a lot of the smaller neighbourhood houses and learn locals in our region the opportunity to connect and develop partnerships. And there's a lot of partnerships happening around in our area because now it gives them that interaction both way. It gives them collaboration. It gives them access to the web and of course, social media. Now we've moved from Web 2 to Web 3, which takes us even one step further. So what that means now we're working with mobile learning, and that has just changed everything we can do as teachers, because what it's actually done, it's made it possible for our learners to learn any time, any place, and that is just absolutely wonderful. One of the projects that we had in this region was for the ACFI eMentor project. Now that project helped a series of learn local and neighbourhood house organisations within the Gippsland region build their e-capability, and that gave them the chance to just learn about how technology was working. So they're able to share ideas and resources. It's also allowed the small training organisations to achieve big things, especially with the help of the capacity grants that help to set them up. For an example, we have a neighbourhood house in Melbourne called Kanara Neighbourhood House, and they're now teaching childcare in the Northern Territory. So these are the things that technology has allowed us to do. So you might be an isolated small organisation, things out of your own area and share your work elsewhere. Also, one of the biggest problems that we've had for a long time that I think in the not-for-profit is the fact that tutor PD is sometimes really expensive. I know that we can pay up to $600 to go to a conference or to go and have some training. Plus, we suffer the tyranny of distance, a lot of us, and I'm sure a lot of you do too. We have to travel. Myself personally, I have to travel for 4 hours to get to the nearest city if I want to go and do some training. So it made sense to bring the training online, to bring in Creative Commons so that we can actually start teaching each other and learning from our peers. So it's worked out very well. Just going to change this PowerPoint. So what's happened since this all started, which is all going really well, we have a number of small, as I said, not-for-profit training and learning centres here in Gippsland, and they've really already seen the sense in being well networked. And one very small, isolated neighbourhood house is using technology to teach our training that we do. We use a blended delivery, so part of it's online, but we always have like a mentor or the teacher going out to the organisations that are close by where the students are learning and meeting the students there. So we take them through an orientation of setting them up online, how to use the webinar room, how the course will be run, and how to get into what we use is a Moodle. And a Moodle is a learning management system. I won't go too deep into that now because I think it'll take you a little bit off track a bit. That's another layer of what we do. Now, what happened with this organisation, they are now delivering courses to their training teachers throughout the state of Victoria how to use technology, and they've got a course, I think it's called eSkills. So it's an actually really good idea. So what has been developed, because we do have these small training organisations that are wanting to run courses, we now have what we call VET Commons, and it's been set up to help the education sector. This VET Commons, it was only launched in April, and it offers free and paid resources. And what happens with that VET Commons, it sits inside what we call a Moodle. It sits inside this room where it's left there so that when you're actually creating your course content, you just can zip over to the VET Commons as a plugin within the website and find your information there. So this is really a positive step. What it'll do, it'll cut down the time for teachers in searching for content, and it'll also help developing courses a lot easier. And one of the things that's really important, it makes us aware of the Creative Commons license, because there's still quite a number of people out there that aren't using the Creative Commons license. And what we've been trying to do during the Mentor project and during other sessions that we have is to actually teach people how this works. But there in Australia for people to go and learn a little bit more about technology and how it's used, and that is the Australia E-Series. They're a group of volunteer educators right throughout all sectors that run weekly online sessions, and they're all free. And they actually have their Aussie Live. Now, their Aussie Live, that's a free conference that they run, and they invite others from around the world to see what Australia has offers. So in February, for example, Aussie Live's on, and what will happen is everything that we make will be created within Creative Commons, so that educators right throughout the world can come to our sessions and pick up resources, join the website, and be able to share information with us. And it's really good because it gives us an opportunity to highlight the talent that we actually have in this country. Now, another area I work for Broadband for Seniors. I'm the Broadband for Seniors networker for Victoria. We have a huge network of volunteer tutors across Australia. And Adult Learning Australia, who is works within that department, ensures all volunteers have networking support. So they're able to access their resources online. So we have what we call a wiki there for them. So they can also, we offer free webinars. There's one on right at the moment actually, and it's about Excel. They might want to know a bit more about Windows 8 or iPad, so we can offer them training. Now, these volunteers are right throughout the country. There's quite a couple of thousand of them, and they actually facilitate the Broadband for Seniors program initiative. And it's perfect for the isolation and those isolated with distance. So what we've actually created is a community of practice for all our seniors in every small community across Australia. Communities have broadband for seniors, so therefore we have created this wonderful community of practice, and we have a Google group where the actual seniors can go online and they can then start asking questions and finding out information. So if someone's got a problem about where do I find something, or how do I do a little trick or a tip, that is already there for them. So it's a very important part of building that network, and the model works really well. Now I'm just going to move again, another slide. Now what I'm showing you now is just some examples of how we've actually used Creative Commons. And I'm going to show, this is a couple of good examples. And what we did was, I was involved with what's called an ePortfolio MOOC, a massive open online course. And also involved in another one called Become an eLearner. Now, the aim for both these courses was to share and develop resources that could be used by anyone at a later date. So it had a strong Creative Commons presence. And what we wanted to do was go and seek resources and information and put them on this Learn space so that people could access and put themselves together a nice e-portfolio, then come back and share their work with us. So this site is actually still open and people can actually able to use the resources on it. We even used had little challenges, as you can see, and gave out badges as people completed each step. This was all free. There was no charge for this, and this is sort of a little bit like, well, what's coming in the future? We're seeing more and more free online courses all the time. But the main features of the MOOC, what it allowed was for everyone to provide and share content, just written forums, comments, images, and videos. It offered extensive resources, and they were able to reuse those resources. And so it's a good example of online sharing. And the MOOC was retained to continue, and it's being shared by third parties. So we really think that MOOC is a really good thing. I'm just going to change the slide again. Okay, now, the thing that I'm talking about now, which is something that where we find our information. So when you're thinking about, oh, you know, we saw how you can find Flickr and Google today, and how to find resources, but it was quite difficult to find actual content that we could put into courses. So a lot of it has to be for pre-accredited or accredited courses. So we're looking for specific information and specific subjects that we want to do. It might be business, it might be, think about hairdressing, hospitality. There's all sorts of areas that as teachers, when we're developing course content, that we have to find our information. So we're lucky now that we have what we call this open educational resources, and they've got some exceptionally really well created resources. They're freely used, they're to find, and there's no reinventing the wheel. And that's one of the problems as educators in the smaller organisations, is we don't really want to reinvent the wheel. We don't see the sense in that. If someone can do the work and happy to share it, we're happy to take it and then improve it. Then someone else comes along and takes that work again and improves it again. So we're quite happy to do this, and we actually have a network that do nothing but share. So that's how we really like to do it. So for course content developers, Open Education has a vast pool of openly shared and freely used educational resources. The Open Education resources have Creative Commons that state specifically how the material can be used, reused, adapted and shared. So all the hard work's already done. And also anyone can access and make use of the open educational resources. So it's really great for those like myself that are interested in lifelong learning. So what's really happening now is we're informed and we're armed with licenses that now help us share. So today's teachers in all sectors can communicate, share and modify material in new and really interesting ways. Creative Commons also has provided a place for educators and learners to manage our own copyright. So in reality, what's happened is there are no longer any doors closed, and that's how we like to look at it. So we're going to show you a couple of websites and take you into a couple of the things that I've talked about. So I'll just pull this PowerPoint down. And the first one I want to show you, and I'm hoping that you'll see that in a few moments, is ePortfolio Learn Space for ePortfolios. And what we're going to do, some of these websites I'm going to show you, we're going to put them in an email for you and send them off to you so that you've got those. Okay, so we'll make sure that you've got a copy of all this information so you can see what we've been up to. Learn Space for ePortfolios. And it had a lot of missions and quests, and series were the challenge mentors. So the team at the Australia Year Series came along to this MOOC and they helped run the webinars and orientate everything. So it was quite a also, you'll notice on the bottom this is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share, and you'll find that Creative Commons license is probably the most common that I come across with my colleagues. So if you guys would like to build yourself an ePortfolio, believe me, this is the best site to have a look. The next one I'm going to just give a quick look to, and I believe there's a 4-second delay. Now, this is another course that we put together. Now, this course was funded to be developed. So this was also developed by Learn Local and 1H Services in Yarrawonga. So what it was all about was we developed this course, and of course, again, there's the Creative Commons Attribute Share Alike license. And what it was created so that educators were able to take this course, take it away, and deliver it themselves. So that's what this is all about. Everything here can be reused. There's a course there, communicate online and communicate and collaborate online. So this is a very important part of what we do. So this is the first and easy ways of getting our learners involved in what's going on. So by using blended delivery, which is what we do, and then add our own work, and using the Creative Commons license works out well. So why we use a blended delivery is it's always good for the learner to that face-to-face interaction with the person that they're going to spend the next couple of months with online. It just helps a little bit. So we found that the blended model works quite well. We also have our national vet strategy. So if you're doing courses that are pre-accredited or accredited, this is where you'll come. This is where the first step for a lot of educators are, because especially those working in the TAFE system, working in the Learn Local system, in the community colleges, this is the place that a lot of them will go. And as you can see, they have a whole heap of information and places to go. So we don't have to do all that extra trolling around trying to find what we're looking for. Then we always have within our networks our favourite people that we follow. And one of my favourites has always been a colleague of mine who I work together with quite often, Penny Bentley. Now, Penny, what she's done is she has set up a whole website, and a lot of us do this. We curate information and send it out to people. And she set up a whole website that can help us find what we're looking for. So I'll click on audio. What is it? Sites that I find Creative Commons information and open learning. If I go to now, Penny, a science teacher and a mathematics teacher, so you find a lot of information on this site relevant for the science teacher and the maths teacher, and that's the beauty about being networked. We network with people that have a skill set, and we're able to learn from that skill set. So can you imagine what it was like before, when we were locked in classrooms? We had just our little workbooks, but we never saw anyone else. The only time we got together was if we had a staff room meeting or something like that. So there was no reflection, there was no feedback. By being online and developing our networks, we're able now to go deeper in the way that we learn and train. Now also we have the Open Education Resources actually has its own website too. If we look for information at all, that's the place we can go, and we find that really a nice handy little thing. And of course I'm just going to show you one more slide. That's our broadband for seniors that I'm talking about. Work for this for and this is our we actually share with all our, as you'll notice, it's all licensed under Creative Attribute, share alike, non-commercial. Everything in here is available. So if I was to click on, say, cyber safety, all information that can be shared on cyber safety, because we do actually believe that that is very important. Okay, well, look, thank you very much. That's pretty much me. I'll just bring you back to a camera. Thank you very much. That's me done. And anyone got any questions? That'll be wonderful. I'm sure that Kiki and that will set up the person to ask the questions, please.
There is one question that has come through.
Yes.
And that is, where would you be if you had
confused and lost, which we were at the start. We were using material that wasn't allowed to be used, so there was a lot of that going on at the start. So a lot of people had to be pulled into place, even myself when we first started. But remembering that when we first started and when Web2 first came out, there really wasn't, Creative Commons wasn't that popular at the time. Creative Commons is now coming more to the front. It has been for about the last 3 years, and we run classes and teach each other how to use it. So that's how we've been getting there with that. Is that right?
That's wonderful, Janita. We had a little bit, your broadband was a little bit patchy there, but one of the things I know you're going to do.
we don't.
Sorry, one of the things I know we're going to do is put together some of those resources and websites and send that out to all of the attendees. That's right.
Yes, that'd be. I've got it all ready for you, Kiki. I'll just send it through to you in a moment. I'll email it through, and then you can pass it on to everyone.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Janita. Okay, thanks, everyone. So as Janita said, we're actually going to put together an email with links to the resources and websites. Elliot's also just brought it to my attention that he wanted to show you how to find photos using Google Images. But we'll include that in the email as well. I had a question also from Troy about finding resources for his education programs. I'm sure he'll find a lot of resources in some of the websites that we'll send that Janita has. And also, we'll be sending a link to group discussion if you want to ask any other further questions afterwards, perhaps next week. That's great. We'll be available for you then. So I just wanted to thank our presenters, Janita, Elliot, today. It's really great of them to donate their time and share their knowledge with us. And thank you, Harry, for being on standby, fielding questions for me.